This happened 3 months ago, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around what went down. I've told maybe 2 people about this, and both of them looked at me like I'd completely lost my mind. But I swear on everything I hold dear, this is exactly what happened. It was a Tuesday night in October. I remember because I had just gotten home from my shift at the warehouse, dead tired, ready to crash on the couch with some leftover pizza and mindlessly scroll through my phone until I fell asleep. Nothing unusual about that routine. I'd been doing the same thing for months. I was about halfway through reheating my dinner when my phone buzzed. Text message. I figured it was probably my buddy Jake asking if I wanted to grab drinks later, or maybe my mom checking in like she always does. But when I looked at the screen, my blood went cold. The message was from my own number, not a number that looked similar to mine. Not some scammer spoofing my digits. It was literally from my exact phone number showing up in my messages like I had texted myself, which obviously I hadn't done. The message said, "Stop what you're doing and listen carefully. This is you from 6 hours in the future. Do not go to sleep tonight. Do not stay in your apartment. Pack a bag right now and get to Mom's house. I'm serious. Your life depends on it." I stared at that message for probably 2 full minutes, just trying to process what I was looking at. My first thought was that someone was messing with me. Maybe Jake had figured out how to spoof numbers or something. But then I noticed other details that made my stomach drop. The message knew I was at my apartment. It knew I was planning to go to sleep soon. And most disturbing of all, it knew exactly how I talked to myself in my own head. The phrasing, the way it said, "I'm serious" instead of "I'm not kidding" or "this isn't a joke." That's exactly how I would have said it. I set my phone down on the counter and took a step back. Like the thing might explode. This had to be some kind of prank. Or maybe I was having some kind of mental breakdown. People don't get texts from future versions of themselves. That's not how reality works. But then my phone buzzed again. I know you're thinking this is fake. I know you're wondering if Jake set this up somehow. Check your browser history from last week, Wednesday night, 11:47 p.m. You looked up that thing you've never told anyone about, the thing that happened when you were 8 years old. No one else knows about that search. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone. I opened my browser history and scrolled back to the previous Wednesday. There it was, 47 p.m. A search I had made in a moment of weakness, something I'd been curious about but never had the courage to look up before. Something deeply personal that I hadn't shared with another living soul. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't someone guessing lucky. This was impossible, but it was happening. Another message came through. You're scared. I remember being scared. But you need to move now. Pack clothes for 3 days, grab your passport from the shoebox in your closet. Take the cash you keep taped under your desk drawer. Don't turn on any lights except the one in your bedroom and keep the curtains closed. I found myself following the instructions before I'd even consciously decided to do it. Something about the urgency in those messages, the way they seemed to anticipate my every thought and hesitation, made my survival instincts kick in. I grabbed a duffel bag from my closet and started throwing clothes into it. As I was packing, more messages kept coming through, each one more specific and terrifying than the last. The blue car that's been parked across the street for the past 3 days isn't supposed to be there. The driver has been watching your building. Don't look out the window to check. Just trust me. In about 10 minutes, someone is going to knock on your door. They're going to say they're from the gas company checking for a leak. Do not answer that door. Don't make any noise. They'll go away after a few minutes. When you leave, go out the back exit through the basement. Your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, always leaves her bike unlocked by the dumpster. Borrow it. You'll return it tomorrow. Ride to the subway station on Elm Street, not the closer one on Main. Take the red line to downtown, then catch a cab to Mom's. I was moving on autopilot now, following these instructions like my life depended on it, because according to my future self, it did. I grabbed my passport, found the cash I kept hidden for emergencies, and was shoving my laptop into the bag when I heard it. 3 sharp knocks on my front door. I froze. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure whoever was outside could hear it. Then came a voice muffled through the door. Gas company. We've had reports of a possible leak in this building. Need to check all the units. I held my breath and didn't move. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. Hello? Anyone home? This is about safety, sir. We really need to check your apartment. My phone buzzed again. Stay quiet. They'll try for another 2 minutes, then they'll leave. Count to 180 after you hear their footsteps going away, then go. Sure enough, after what felt like an eternity of knocking and calling through the door, I heard footsteps retreating down the hallway. I counted to 180 just like the message said, then grabbed my bag and headed for the back stairs. The basement exit was just as my future self had described. Mrs. Chen's bike was right there by the dumpster. I felt terrible about taking it, but I left a note promising to return it and explaining it was an emergency. The ride to the subway felt like the longest 10 minutes of my life. Every car that passed made me paranoid. Every person on the street looked suspicious, but I made it to the Red Line station, caught the train downtown, and grabbed a cab to my mom's house in the suburbs. Mom was surprised to see me show up at her door at almost midnight with a duffel bag, but she didn't ask too many questions. She just made up the couch and said we'd talk in the morning. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept thinking about those messages, about the impossible situation I found myself in, about what might have happened if I'd ignored them and gone to bed like I'd originally planned. The next morning, I got another text from my own number. You did good. Check the news, local section. I grabbed Mom's newspaper and found a small article buried on page 6. There had been a break-in at my apartment building sometime between midnight and 3 a.m. 2 units had been hit. Mine was one of them. The intruders had completely trashed both apartments, like they were looking for something specific. The police had no leads. But that wasn't even the strangest part, because as I was reading that article, trying to process what I'd narrowly avoided, another message came through from my future self. And this one changed everything. That was just the beginning. They know you got away. Pack again. This time you're going to need to disappear completely. I stared at that message until my eyes hurt. Just when I thought this nightmare was over, my future self was telling me it was only getting started. I showed my mom the newspaper article and made up some story about having a feeling something bad was going to happen. She believed me, thankfully, but I could see the worry in her eyes. The rest of that day was torture. I kept waiting for another message, some kind of explanation about who they were and why they were after me. But my phone stayed silent until around 6 that evening. You're wondering who they are. I wish I could tell you everything, but some information is too dangerous to put in a text. What I can say is this. Remember the USB drive you found in Dad's old toolbox last month? The one you thought was just filled with his work documents? You need to get it tonight. My dad had passed away 2 years ago, and we'd been slowly going through his things. Last month I'd found an old USB drive mixed in with his tools. I'd plugged it into my laptop, saw what looked like boring spreadsheets and technical documents from his job at the power plant, and stuck it in my desk drawer without thinking much about it. But now my future self was telling me it was important enough that people were willing to break into my apartment and trash the place looking for it. Mom's going to bed soon. When she does, drive back to your place. Park 3 blocks away. Use the fire escape to get to your apartment. The USB drive is in your desk drawer, second from the top, underneath the old phone chargers. Grab it and get out. Don't turn on any lights. Use your phone's flashlight if you need to. I waited until Mom went to sleep around 10, then borrowed her car and drove back toward my neighborhood. My hands were sweating the entire time. 3 blocks away from my building, I parked on a side street and walked the rest of the way. The fire escape was on the back side of the building, hidden from the street. I'd never used it before, but somehow I managed to climb up to my 3rd-floor window. The window was still unlocked from when I'd cracked it open earlier that week. My apartment looked like a war zone. Every drawer had been pulled out and dumped. My couch cushions were slashed open. Books were scattered everywhere. These people hadn't just been looking for something small like a USB drive. They'd been thorough and destructive, like they were angry. I found my way to the desk in the dark, using my phone's flashlight. The 2nd drawer had been completely emptied, but I felt around the bottom and found what I was looking for. The USB drive was still taped underneath, exactly where I'd left it. As I was climbing back down the fire escape, another message came through. Good. Now get to the 24-hour diner on Route 9, order coffee and wait. Someone will find you there. Someone will find me? I texted back to my own number. It felt insane having a conversation with myself like this. But nothing about this situation was normal anymore. The response came immediately. Trust me, you'll know when you see them. The diner on Route 9 was one of those old-school places that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1975. At 11:30 on a Wednesday night, it was mostly empty except for a tired-looking waitress and a trucker at the counter nursing a cup of coffee. I ordered coffee like my future self had instructed and sat in a booth near the back, constantly checking my phone for more messages. But for the first time in 2 days, it stayed quiet. Around midnight, the bell above the door chimed and a woman walked in. She was maybe 40 with short gray hair and wearing a simple black jacket. She looked around the diner, her eyes landing on me for just a second longer than seemed natural. Then she walked over to my booth. "You're David, right?" she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I'm Sarah. I worked with your father." My blood went cold. Dad had been dead for 2 years. How could this woman know about the USB drive, know that I'd be here tonight? Unless my future self had somehow contacted her too. "I know this is confusing," Sarah continued, keeping her voice low. "But your father wasn't just a maintenance supervisor at the power plant. He was documenting something dangerous. And now the people he was investigating know that you have his files." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device that looked like a cross between a phone and a radio. "This is how your future self has been contacting you. Your father was working on temporal communication technology before he died. He figured out how to send messages backwards through time, but only by a few hours and only to yourself." I felt like the floor was dropping out from under me. "That's impossible. A lot of things are impossible until they happen," Sarah said. "Your father discovered that certain people in the government and private sector were planning something catastrophic. He spent months collecting evidence, storing it all on that drive you're carrying. But they found out about his investigation before he could expose them." "Are you saying they killed my dad?" The words came out as barely a whisper. Sarah nodded grimly. "The heart attack was induced. They made it look natural. But your father was smart. He built in a fail-safe. If anything happened to him, the temporal communication device would eventually activate and reach out to the next of kin." "That's you." My phone buzzed. Another message from my future self. "Sarah is telling the truth. Give her the drive. She'll know what to do with it, but David, this is important. After you give her the drive, you need to disappear for a while. These people won't stop coming after you until they're sure you don't know anything." I looked at Sarah, then back at my phone. "How do I know I can trust you?" "Because your future self just told you to," she said with a small smile. "And because I'm the only person who can make sure your father's sacrifice meant something." I handed over the USB drive. Sarah plugged it into her device and scrolled through the files quickly. Her expression grew darker with each passing second. "Jesus," she whispered. "Your father documented everything, financial records, communication logs, planned operations. This is enough to bring down a dozen people in high places." She looked up at me. "You need to go. Tonight. Don't go back to your mother's house. Don't contact anyone you know. I'll handle getting this information to the right people, but it's going to take time. And until these people are behind bars, you're not safe." As I was leaving the diner, my phone buzzed one last time. "You did it. The nightmare is almost over. In 3 months, you'll be able to come home. Sarah will contact you when it's safe. Stay strong. And David, thank Dad for me. He saved a lot of lives. That was 3 months ago. I've been living under a fake name in a small town in Montana, working at a gas station and waiting. Last week, Sarah finally called. The people who killed my father have been arrested. The conspiracy he uncovered has been exposed. I can go home. But I keep thinking about those messages from my future self, about the impossible technology my father created, about how a simple USB drive in a toolbox changed everything. I still don't fully understand what happened to me, But I know one thing for certain, sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that save your life.